Have you ever wondered what it would be like to possess incredible, superhuman strength? To be feared by your enemies and revered by your people, knowing that you alone hold the power to change the course of history? But what if that strength came with a price? One that would ultimately test your faith, your relationships, and your very soul. Samson, the man famously known as the strongest in the Bible, lived this reality. His story isn't just about physical power. It's about betrayal, redemption, and a divine purpose that guided his every step. But here's the twist. Samson's downfall didn't come from an outside force. It came from within. In a world that glorifies physical might, Samson's journey forces us to look deeper. He had the strength to crush his enemies, but his real battle was with his own weaknesses. And in a shocking turn of events, it was his vulnerability, not his power, that defined his greatest victory. If you think Samson's story is just another heroic tale, think again. The lessons buried in his life may just change how you view your own strength, your challenges, and even your faith. Curious about how a man who lost everything in one moment still became a hero in his final breath? Samson's story isn't just a tale from the past. It's a blueprint for anyone who's ever faced betrayal, lost their way, or sought redemption. Buckle up, because what you're about to uncover isn't just the story of the Bible's strongest man. It's a journey that might just help you discover the strength hidden within yourself. Samson's story starts in a remarkable way, with a divine intervention that sets the stage for his life's purpose. His mother, who had been barren, was visited by an angel with a powerful message. Imagine this moment. An ordinary woman, with no hope of children, suddenly promised a son who would change the fate of Israel. This child, Samson, wasn't just any child. He was set apart by God to lead the Israelites and deliver them from the Philistines' oppressive rule. It's a story that immediately captures attention, because it speaks to the idea that even in moments of despair, there can be a miraculous turnaround. Many people can relate to feeling stuck or without hope, and this story of Samson reminds us that sometimes our biggest breakthroughs come when we least expect them. As Samson grew, his purpose became clearer. His parents, undoubtedly overwhelmed by the divine promise, raised him with the knowledge that he was chosen for something great. It's interesting to think about how this awareness might have shaped his personality, knowing from a young age that his life was destined for something far beyond the ordinary. In many ways, it mirrors how individuals today might feel when they recognize their own unique calling. Some people feel a strong sense of purpose early in life, while others discover it later. But like Samson, realizing you have a bigger role to play in the world can be both empowering and daunting. Throughout Samson's youth, the Nazirite vow hung over him as a reminder of his calling. This vow, with its specific rules, wasn't just a set of restrictions. It was a visible sign of his consecration to God. The idea that his hair, uncut and untouched by a blade, symbolized his dedication is profound. It's a reminder of how external symbols can reflect an inner commitment. In modern times, we might think about how people choose to express their own dedication to a higher purpose, whether through personal sacrifices or through outward signs like religious practices or community service. And just like Samson, these commitments often set them apart from others, highlighting the strength it takes to live according to a higher standard. Samson's life was governed by the Nazirite vow, a set of divine restrictions that gave him a unique place among the Israelites. This vow wasn't just about following rules. It was a deep, symbolic connection between Samson and God. He was required to abstain from wine, avoid cutting his hair, and maintain a strict level of ritual purity. These rules were not mere formalities. They signified a higher level of dedication. Samson's uncut hair, the most visible symbol of his vow, represented his commitment and strength, and breaking it would have spiritual consequences. Today, people might see such sacrifices in a similar light, whether they give up certain luxuries or commit to long-term goals that require discipline. It's a lesson in how sacred promises often demand personal sacrifices. Living under such strict guidelines was no easy task, especially in a society that may not have fully understood the significance of his vow. Imagine the pressure Samson felt, knowing that his strength was directly tied to his obedience. It's like having a superpower that's contingent upon never breaking a single rule. In modern terms, we often see this in professions where discipline and restraint are key. Athletes, for example, must stick to rigorous diets and exercise regimes to maintain their physical edge, just as Samson adhered to his vow to keep his strength. This parallels the idea that true power often comes from mastering oneself, a theme echoed in many success stories today. The vow didn't just set Samson apart, it isolated him in some ways. While his peers were free to enjoy wine or cut their hair, Samson had to constantly be mindful of his choices. This kind of separation can lead to feelings of loneliness or misunderstanding, especially when others don't share your same values or restrictions. Yet, this very isolation is what forged his unique identity. In much the same way, people today who follow strict personal codes, whether moral, spiritual, or professional, often find themselves standing apart from the crowd. And while this can be challenging, it's also what sets leaders and change-makers apart. Samson's uncut hair became a symbol not just to him, but to everyone around him. It was a mark of his strength and his divine calling. In a society where outward appearances often communicate inner beliefs, his hair was a constant reminder of the power that came from his relationship with God. This outward symbol is much like how people today wear specific items, like wedding rings, religious symbols, or even certain styles of dress, to show their commitments or beliefs. The way we present ourselves can speak volumes about what we stand for, just as Samson's hair told the world about his vow and the source of his strength. But it wasn't just about physical appearance. The restrictions also served as a constant mental and spiritual reminder. Every time Samson passed on a glass of wine or felt the weight of his long hair, he was reminded of the responsibility he carried. It's similar to how individuals today might create reminders of their goals or commitments, like writing down affirmations or keeping a vision board. These daily reminders keep them focused and aligned with their larger purpose. Much like Samson's daily adherence to the Nazirite vow kept him on track for his divine mission. However, the vow wasn't just about following rules for the sake of rules. It was about maintaining a deep connection with God, and his obedience was a testament to that relationship. It's a powerful reflection on how external actions often mirror internal devotion. The same is true today. Many people find that their outward commitments, whether to family, work, or faith, are reflections of their internal beliefs and values. It's through these daily actions that we stay true to what we believe in. It's crucial to note that Samson's strength came not from his hair itself, but from what his uncut hair represented, his connection with God. This reminds us that real power doesn't come from physical strength or appearances alone, but from staying true to one's principles and commitments. Just like Samson's adherence to the Nazirite vow gave him his incredible strength, people today can draw strength from their own convictions and the promises they make to themselves or others. Samson's first display of strength was nothing short of miraculous. While on his way to meet his future wife, a lion suddenly attacked him. Without hesitation and with no weapon in hand, Samson tore the lion apart with his bare hands. This act wasn't just about brute strength, it was a testament to his divine calling. Imagine the intensity of that moment, facing an apex predator, yet overpowering it effortlessly. It wasn't just a physical victory but a spiritual one as well, showing that Samson's strength was a gift directly from God. This episode set the tone for the rest of his life, where his feats of strength were not just personal triumphs but a larger narrative about the power of faith and divine intervention. Many can draw parallels to this in their own lives. Facing challenges that seem insurmountable, like that lion, can feel overwhelming. But with the right mindset, and perhaps a little faith, those challenges can be overcome. It's like when someone faces a difficult situation at work or a personal crisis. Often, the strength they didn't know they had comes to the surface. Samson's story serves as a reminder that inner strength often emerges when we least expect it. It encourages us to look beyond the immediate problem and see the bigger picture, recognizing that sometimes the strength to overcome comes from a higher source. After his victory over the lion, Samson chose to keep the event a secret, even from his parents. This choice adds another layer to his complex character. Why would he hide such an extraordinary feat? Perhaps it reflects his awareness of the unique nature of his strength and the weight of responsibility that came with it. It's a bit like how, today, people might downplay their own successes or abilities, either out of modesty or fear of being misunderstood. Samson's secretiveness hints at a man who is not just defined by his strength, but by a deeper, more reflective side. It shows us that even those who achieve great things often carry the weight of their own insecurities or doubts. In the days that followed, Samson encountered the carcass of the lion again, only to find that bees had made a hive in it, producing honey. This strange, almost poetic occurrence became significant later when he used it as the basis for a riddle. But on a deeper level, it symbolized how something sweet can emerge from something deadly. Life often works that way. Challenges or defeats that seem bitter at first can, over time, produce unexpected rewards. It's like how failures in life can lead to later success, or how difficult experiences can teach us valuable lessons. Samson's encounter with the lion's carcass and the honey is a metaphor for finding sweetness and meaning in life's challenges. This early event in Samson's life set the stage for his escalating confrontation with the Philistines. It was more than just a personal victory. It was a signal to the Philistines that Israel's deliverer had arrived. In much the same way, people today can view their early successes as stepping stones to larger goals. Samson didn't stop with the lion. It was just the beginning of his mission to free Israel from oppression. Similarly, small victories in life, whether in one's career, relationships, or personal growth, are often the building blocks for greater achievements. Samson's fight with the lion wasn't just about the physical act, it was a symbol of his struggle against those who oppressed Israel. The lion could easily be seen as a metaphor for the Philistines, who threatened Israel's survival. Samson, with his God-given strength, was Israel's protector, much like how leaders today are called upon to defend and uplift those they serve. This idea of using one's gifts not just for personal gain but for the benefit of others is a powerful reminder of the broader responsibility we all carry in our own lives. It's also important to recognize that Samson's victories weren't just for him, they were for his people. His strength was a gift not to be hoarded, but to be used for the greater good. In a world where individual success is often prioritized, Samson's story reminds us that true strength lies in serving others. It's like how modern-day heroes, whether they're public figures, leaders, or everyday people, use their abilities to uplift those around them. Samson's feats of strength were a constant reminder that his purpose was tied to the freedom and well-being of Israel. This story of Samson's early strength serves as a prelude to the even greater acts he would perform later in life. It's a reminder that the journey to greatness often starts with small, seemingly isolated events. The lion was just the first of many challenges Samson would face, and it foreshadowed the epic battles to come. It teaches us that every step we take, no matter how small, is preparing us for something bigger. And just like Samson, we are all capable of far more than we might realize when faced with life's trials. Samson's next major feat didn't involve brute strength but cleverness, revealing a different side of his character. During his wedding feast, Samson posed a riddle to the Philistines. Out of the eater, something to eat, out of the strong, something sweet. This riddle, drawn from his previous encounter with the lion and the honey, was more than just a playful challenge. It was a way for Samson to assert his dominance over the Philistines in a cunning, intellectual way. It's a reminder that strength comes in many forms, not just physical, and sometimes, outwitting your opponents is just as powerful as defeating them in battle. Today, many people face situations where mental agility is more important than physical force, whether it's negotiating a business deal or navigating complex relationships. However, the Philistines, unable to solve the riddle on their own, resorted to deceit. They pressured Samson's wife into revealing the answer, which introduced the theme of betrayal into the story. It's a common thread in human relationships, where trust can be easily broken, and even those closest to us might not always have our best interests at heart. Samson's wife's betrayal must have stung deeply, not just because it cost him the riddle, but because it showed that his personal relationships were not immune to manipulation by his enemies. This aspect of his life resonates with many today. How often do we find that the people we trust can sometimes be influenced by outside forces, leading to disappointment? Samson's response to this betrayal was swift and violent. He killed 30 Philistine men, taking their clothes as payment for the wager he lost due to the riddle. This reaction might seem extreme, but it speaks to the deep sense of injustice Samson felt. His anger wasn't just about the riddle. It was about being deceived and manipulated. This intense reaction highlights how powerful emotions, like anger and betrayal, can drive people to actions they might not otherwise take. In today's world, many people can relate to the feeling of being wronged and the strong desire for retribution. Samson's story warns us of the dangers of letting anger control our actions, and how it can lead to more destruction than resolution. What makes this part of Samson's story particularly interesting is how it reflects the constant tension between him and the Philistines. His riddle wasn't just a playful game. It was a symbol of the larger struggle between Israel and its oppressors. By outsmarting the Philistines, Samson was asserting Israel's superiority, even if only temporarily. It's a reminder that conflicts often have deeper layers, and what seems like a simple challenge can actually represent a much larger battle for power and control. This dynamic is present in many aspects of life, from politics to personal relationships, where the surface-level conflict often hides deeper tensions. The way Samson dealt with the Philistines after they solved the riddle also shows the consequences of pride. His initial challenge was rooted in confidence, but when that confidence was shaken, his pride drove him to drastic actions. It's a common experience. How often do we react defensively when our pride is hurt? Samson's story serves as a warning about the dangers of letting pride dictate our actions, reminding us that humility can sometimes be a more powerful tool than retaliation. It's a lesson many of us could benefit from in today's world, where pride often leads to unnecessary conflicts. The riddle itself is fascinating because it encapsulates Samson's life in a single line. Out of the eater, something to eat. Out of the strong, something sweet. This idea of finding sweetness in strength, or nourishment in adversity, is a theme that runs throughout Samson's story. Just as he found honey in the carcass of the lion, he often found strength in his greatest challenges. This teaches us an important life lesson. Sometimes, our most difficult moments can lead to unexpected blessings or revelations. It's a message of hope for those going through tough times, that even in struggle, there is often something sweet to be found. Samson's interactions with the Philistines during this episode highlight another key theme: the complexity of relationships with enemies. While he was destined to deliver Israel from the Philistines, his relationship with them was far from black and white. His marriage to a Philistine woman, the riddle, and the resulting feud show how intertwined his life was with the very people he was supposed to defeat. It's a reminder that in life, our relationships are often more complicated than they appear on the surface, and even those we are in conflict with can play significant roles in our personal stories. This episode sets the stage for the larger confrontations to come. The riddle, betrayal, and Samson's violent reaction are just the beginning of a long and bloody feud with the Philistines. It foreshadows the greater battles Samson will face, both physically and emotionally. In many ways, it's a reminder that life's challenges often escalate, and the way we handle smaller conflicts can shape how we approach larger ones in the future. Samson's story encourages us to be mindful of how we react to adversity, knowing that every decision can have long-lasting consequences. Samson's story takes a fiery turn with one of his most creative acts of vengeance. After being wronged by his wife's family, Samson sought revenge in a way that left a lasting impact on the Philistines. He captured 300 foxes, tied them together in pairs by their tails, and set them ablaze before releasing them into the Philistines' fields. The destruction was massive. Grain fields, vineyards, and olive groves went up in flames, leaving the Philistines devastated. This act of vengeance wasn't just about personal revenge. It was a symbolic attack on the Philistines' prosperity. In a world where wealth was measured by crops and resources, Samson's fiery destruction hit them where it hurt most: their livelihood. This story shows that when people are deeply wronged, their response can be both calculated and dramatic, impacting not just individuals but entire communities. The way Samson planned and executed this act of revenge reveals his tactical brilliance. He didn't just strike out in anger. He carefully thought through how to cause maximum damage to his enemies. In much the same way, people today often channel their frustrations into calculated actions, whether in business, politics, or personal relationships. When someone feels wronged, the natural instinct is to seek retribution, and like Samson, many seek to hit their adversaries where it hurts the most. It's a reminder that even when emotions run high, strategic thinking can amplify the impact of our actions. What makes this event particularly striking is how Samson's actions were a direct response to the betrayal he experienced. After his wife was given to another man by her family, Samson's anger burned as fiercely as the fields he destroyed. This personal betrayal fueled his desire for revenge, and his response was as much about emotional pain as it was about physical destruction. Many can relate to this idea, that when we are hurt by those closest to us, the desire for retaliation often feels overwhelming. Samson's story here serves as a cautionary tale, showing how personal pain can drive people to extreme measures. At its core, Samson's fiery vengeance can be seen as an act of rebellion against the Philistine oppression. The fields he burned weren't just crops. They represented the Philistines' dominance over Israel. By destroying their food supply, Samson was striking at the heart of their power. It's a reminder that acts of rebellion, even when driven by personal motives, can have larger political or societal implications. This is seen throughout history, where individual acts of defiance often spark larger movements for change. Samson's story echoes this idea, that sometimes, personal actions can have far-reaching consequences. The use of animals in this act is also fascinating. Tying the foxes together and setting them loose in the fields shows how Samson utilized the resources around him in a creative way. It's a reminder that sometimes, The solutions to our problems require thinking outside the box and using unconventional methods. Just like Samson found an innovative way to strike back at the Philistines, people today often need to be resourceful and think creatively when facing challenges. Whether in business or personal life, those who can adapt and use unexpected strategies often come out on top. Samson's actions also highlight the destructive power of anger. While his retaliation was effective, it also left a trail of devastation that went beyond his immediate goal. The burning fields didn't just harm the Philistines. They had a ripple effect on the environment and likely caused suffering for many innocent people. This serves as a reminder that anger, when unchecked, can lead to unintended consequences. It's a lesson for us all. While it's natural to feel anger when wronged, letting that anger dictate our actions can cause more harm than good. What's particularly intriguing about this episode is how it marks a shift in Samson's relationship with the Philistines. Up until this point, his interactions with them had been more personal, fueled by individual slights and betrayals. But with this act of destruction, Samson began to take on a more active role in the larger conflict between Israel and the Philistines. His personal vengeance became part of a broader struggle for freedom. This transformation is a powerful reminder that personal experiences often shape larger destinies, and our individual battles can sometimes push us into roles we never expected. Samson's vengeance with the foxes foreshadows the escalating violence that will come in his story. It shows that his battle with the Philistines was far from over, and that each act of retaliation only fueled the next. This cycle of vengeance is something we see often in life. When one side strikes, the other responds, creating a never-ending cycle of conflict. Samson's story teaches us that vengeance, while satisfying in the moment, rarely leads to lasting peace. It's a warning that retribution often creates more problems than it solves, a lesson that resonates even today. In one of his most legendary feats, Samson found himself facing 1,000 Philistines, armed with nothing but the jawbone of a donkey. It's hard to imagine the sheer intensity of this moment, surrounded by enemies, outnumbered, and holding what seemed like an absurdly inadequate weapon. Yet, this seemingly insignificant tool became a symbol of Samson's divine strength and resourcefulness. With the Spirit of the Lord empowering him, Samson struck down his enemies one by one, turning a desperate situation into a triumph. This story is a powerful reminder that sometimes, the most unlikely tools can become the instruments of great victory when used with purpose and determination. What makes this battle so striking is how it illustrates the idea that strength isn't always about what you have, but how you use it. The jawbone of a donkey was not a sword or spear, it was a humble, everyday object. Yet, in Samson's hands, it became a weapon of mass destruction. This mirrors many situations in life, where people might feel like they don't have the resources they need to succeed, but with the right mindset and determination, even the simplest tools can lead to extraordinary outcomes. It's a lesson in resourcefulness, showing that the key to success often lies in how we use what we have, rather than focusing on what we lack. This battle also highlights the raw power of faith. Samson wasn't relying on his own strength alone. He knew that his power came from God. This connection between divine empowerment and human action is a recurring theme in Samson's life. It shows us that when we align ourselves with a greater purpose, we can accomplish far more than we could on our own. For many people today, this story serves as a reminder of the importance of faith and belief in something greater than themselves. Whether in personal struggles or professional challenges, tapping into a higher source of strength can make all the difference. Samson's victory with the jawbone wasn't just a physical triumph, it was a spiritual one as well. By defeating 1,000 Philistines with such a humble tool, Samson demonstrated that God's power was greater than any army or weapon. This battle was more than just a fight, it was a declaration of God's supremacy over Israel's enemies. In modern times, this story can inspire us to view our own battles in a different light, recognizing that even when we feel outnumbered or under-equipped, we can still overcome great odds with the right mindset and support. It's a message of hope for those facing overwhelming challenges. The image of Samson standing victorious, surrounded by the fallen bodies of his enemies, with only a jawbone in his hand, is one of the most iconic scenes in the Bible. It's a testament to the idea that victory often comes from unexpected places. Samson's story teaches us that we should never underestimate the potential of even the simplest tools or the smallest opportunities. In a world where success is often measured by wealth, power, or resources, Samson's victory with the jawbone reminds us that true strength comes from within and from a connection to something greater than ourselves. This battle also speaks to the power of perseverance. Samson could have easily given up, seeing the odds stacked against him. Yet, he didn't. He fought with everything he had, refusing to back down even when the situation seemed hopeless. This resilience is something we can all learn from. In life, there will always be moments when we feel outmatched or overwhelmed, but Samson's story encourages us to keep fighting, to use whatever resources we have at our disposal, and to trust that we have the strength to overcome even the most daunting challenges. Samson's use of the jawbone also symbolizes the idea of turning weakness into strength. The donkey's jawbone was a discarded, overlooked object, much like how people often feel when they are dismissed or underestimated. Yet, in Samson's hands, it became the very thing that delivered victory. This is a powerful metaphor for how our own perceived weaknesses can become our greatest strengths when we learn how to use them effectively. It's a reminder that what others might see as a limitation or a flaw can actually be the key to our success. This battle marks a turning point in Samson's story. It wasn't just about winning a fight, it was about establishing his role as Israel's deliverer. The victory with the jawbone solidified his position as a leader and warrior, showing the Philistines that Israel had a champion who could not be easily defeated. It's a reminder that sometimes the battles we face in life are about more than just the immediate outcome. They are about shaping our identity and establishing our place in the world. Samson's victory was a statement of who he was and what he was capable of, and it foreshadowed the even greater battles he would face in the future. Samson's final act is one of the most dramatic and emotional moments in his life. Betrayed by Delilah, the woman he loved, Samson's strength was stripped from him as his hair was cut, breaking the Nazirite vow that had been his source of power. Captured by the Philistines, Samson was blinded and imprisoned, a once mighty man now reduced to a state of humiliation. This moment of betrayal highlights how even the strongest among us can be brought low when we let our guard down. Samson's downfall came not from a physical enemy, but from the trust he placed in someone who ultimately sought to destroy him. It's a powerful reminder of the importance of guarding our hearts and being cautious of those we allow into our inner circle. The Philistines, eager to celebrate their victory over Samson, brought him out to entertain them during a grand feast at the temple of their god, Dagon. This moment is not just about Samson's humiliation, but about the Philistines' mockery of Israel's God. They saw Samson's defeat as a sign that their gods were more powerful, and they wanted to flaunt this perceived superiority. It's a scene that resonates even today, where moments of personal defeat can often feel like public humiliation. Yet, it's in these lowest moments that true strength is often revealed, as Samson's story soon demonstrates. Blinded and bound, Samson was led to the pillars of the temple, where he offered a final, desperate prayer to God. In this moment of vulnerability, Samson recognized that his strength had always come from God, not from his hair or his own abilities. His prayer was simple yet profound. He asked for one last surge of strength to bring down the temple on his enemies. This moment of surrender, where Samson placed his fate entirely in God's hands, is a powerful example of faith in the face of insurmountable odds. It shows us that even in our weakest moments, we can still find strength through faith and trust in a higher power. As Samson stood between the pillars, he pushed with all his might, collapsing the temple and killing more Philistines in his death than he had during his life. This act of destruction was not just a personal victory for Samson, but a symbolic one for Israel. By destroying the temple, Samson struck at the heart of Philistine power and delivered a blow that would be felt for generations. It's a reminder that even in defeat, we can still achieve great things, and that our greatest moments of impact may come when we least expect them. Samson's final act also highlights the theme of redemption. Despite his many failures, his disobedience, his temper, and his betrayal, Samson was given one last chance to fulfill his destiny as Israel's deliverer. This act of redemption speaks to the idea that no matter how far we fall, there is always the possibility of redemption and the opportunity to make things right. It's a message of hope for anyone who has ever felt like they've made too many mistakes or fallen too far from their purpose. Samson's story shows that even at the end, there is always a chance to make a difference. What's particularly moving about Samson's final act is the way it demonstrates the power of humility. Samson, once proud and confident in his own strength, had been brought low. But in his humility, he found a strength greater than anything he had known before. This is a powerful lesson for all of us. Sometimes, it's only when we let go of our pride and acknowledge our limitations that we can tap into our true potential. Samson's humility in his final moments is what allowed him to achieve his greatest victory, showing us that true strength often comes from recognizing our own weakness. The destruction of the temple wasn't just a physical collapse. It symbolized the collapse of Philistine power and the beginning of Israel's liberation. Samson's final act marked the end of an era of oppression and the start of a new chapter for Israel. It's a reminder that even in our darkest moments, we can be the catalyst for change, and that our actions can have far-reaching consequences beyond what we can see. Samson's death was not in vain. It was the turning point in Israel's struggle against their oppressors. Samson's story ends with a sense of both tragedy and triumph. He died alongside his enemies, but in doing so, he fulfilled his purpose as Israel's deliverer. His life, marked by incredible strength and deep personal flaws, serves as a powerful reminder that greatness is not about perfection, but about fulfilling one's purpose despite the challenges and failures along the way. Samson's final act was a testament to the fact that even flawed heroes can accomplish great things, and that our legacy is defined not by our mistakes, but by how we rise from them. After learning about Samson's life, his incredible strength, his moments of weakness, and his ultimate redemption, it's hard not to reflect on our own journeys. What challenges are you facing today that feel like an impossible battle? Maybe, like Samson, you've experienced betrayal or have been brought low by circumstances beyond your control. But Samson's story shows us something vital. No matter how many times we fall, there's always an opportunity to rise again and fulfill our purpose. Ask yourself, are you using the strengths you've been given, or are you letting fear and doubt hold you back? Samson's greatest victories came not from his physical might alone, but from his unwavering faith in something greater than himself. You don't need to be a biblical hero to tap into that same strength. It's within all of us, waiting to be unleashed in the moments we need it most. What are you waiting for? Take control of your story. Just like Samson, you have the power to turn even the darkest moments into a triumphant victory. And remember, this journey doesn't have to be walked alone. If you want to keep discovering these timeless lessons, subscribe to our channel, hit that notification bell, and be a part of a community that's learning and growing together. Samson's story may have ended, but yours is just beginning.